In the end, it wasn't exactly a fairy tale weekend. Storm Amy has come and gone, and while the hardy band of Raith Rovers fans made their way up to Dingwall in the most admirable manner possible, it was Barry Robson's side who huffed and puffed for 80 minutes, only to lose 2 late goals to Ross County for their first win of the season. This, of course, is the Ono podcast. We're back with the unfortunate duty of the post-match podcast, almost a bit more difficult after a loss. I'm your host this evening, Robbie Weir, and I'm joined firstly by Leslie Mabin. How are you getting on? Are you hanging on in Oban there, Leslie?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, another great weekend for Bob McIntyre and won the Dunhill. Bob McIntyre seems to play better the more shite the weather is, which unfortunately I wish that was true for the Rovers as well. But another great weekend, so well done, Bob.
Well, no interest in golf whatsoever myself, but we do extend our congratulations to him. Funny seeing all the housery that was going along the Ryder Cup after all the antics of the Americans. I've got enough of a finger on the pulse for that. And someone who's probably not going to be getting swept away is Carol Smith in Barcelona. How are you getting on, Carol? Bit warmer there?
It is. It's been on and off showers today, so only 24 degrees, and I did pull out the winter cycling gear in preparation, because when it gets below 22, it's freezing.
It's really not. Carol. I'm going to assure you, as someone that's just came back from holiday and it's down into the single digits, it's not that bad. Like, we'll give you it.
Is your heating on yet? That's the only question.
No, I'm holding off, Carol. I don't live like the bourgeoisie here. It's I'm not quite that rich. Wait until maybe end of November and we'll see how we're doing. Anyway, so for the Ross County game, an unfortunate result, but let's go into it. We'll start off with the usual pre-match. So Rovers line up with a couple of changes coming into the team. So it was Josh Ray in goals. We've got Wilson, Hanlon, Fordyce, Docherty and J. Rowe returning into the squad there, and on the right side of defence. Brown and Matthews, along with Easton and Kai Montague, making a starting appearance with Jack Hamilton up top. Leslie, just to start with yourself, no Richard Chin or Lewis Vaughan in the team. Quite disappointing to see that, particularly Chin. Not really an indication that he'd been injured before, but seemingly both him and Vaughan had picked up knocks.
Yeah, I mean, weirdly enough, it's not something you thought you'd say at the start of the season, but probably felt like we would miss Chin more than Vaughan, just with his contributions over the last few weeks. I mean, I've no idea what the issue is. You can imagine it may be a case that if he's touch and go and he's got international duty coming up, that the steer has been just to rest him, and that's I don't know whether that's been a mutual decision, I don't know, but I mean, it was not something you thought you would have said at the start of the season is, damn, but actually it took me a minute to realise Vaughan wasn't even on the bench, and I think that's maybe more a reflection on me than on the side. But I didn't think we'd be in that position where we thought we were missing Vaughan more than Chin. Having said that, it did leave us, as we'll come on to, very thin on the ground on centre forward options. So I mean, would it have been the kind of game for Richard Chin? Maybe not. Certainly not first half. Would that have been the kind of game where what he can do would have added something to us? I don't know. But disappointing to see both those guys missing out just for the quality it took away from us.
Yeah, and to speak about centre forward options, it was a return on the bench for Callum Smith, probably the main positive from yesterday, Carol.
Yeah, and I have to admit, I didn't clock that he was on the team sheet until Raith TV did a run through of the teams, and I did not clock Smith on the bench at all. Because I think I was distracted by Vaughan not being there and Chin missing and just generally and Montague getting his first start. I was just a bit sort of put off, I think. And then, it was nice to see.
Yeah, really good to see that he's back involved in terms of first team action and being able to get him. Hopefully, he'll be able to get some game time sooner rather than later. Admittedly, if Leslie touched on it, but we are a bit short on the forward options. Josh Gentle's got international duty coming up. Richard Chin's got international duty coming up, so it might be that he's making an appearance sooner rather than later. Carol touched on it as well there, Leslie. Kai Montague comes in for a start. Is that quite bold from Barry Robson to give him that opportunity there in a game of this magnitude and a trip up to Dingwall?
Well, I'll tell you what. So that's two managers now who have clearly been itching to use Kai Montague. So remember Neil Collins was always talking about Kai Montague. He's always talking about him in the post-matches, the pre-matches. Barry Robson's the same, like you guys were saying a couple of weeks ago, gone out of his way to actually kind of talk up Kai Montague. So clearly that they've been seeing something in training, that they've clearly seen something and thought they're absolutely desperate to get him in. I suppose it's not as if he's coming from the cold. He came on against Arbroath and he played well. He set up Jack Hamilton's third goal. So, he's played his way into the team, and you could argue he'd sort of earned the right to start it. I suspect if Richard Chin had been fit, we wouldn't have seen Montague starting. I think we would have seen Chin starting again. There will, of course, be elements of our support who would have thought, well, if a midfield player is out, we want Sean Byrne back in and just move everybody up a bit in front of him. I'm not convinced again, though, that the first half would actually have played to the strengths that Sean Byrne gives us, although he might actually have scored from a sideways pass with the wind. But no, I think, as I say, Montague, clearly Barry Robson, just like Neil Collins before him, has been absolutely itching to give this guy a chance. And it was good to see him coming in, because I think, and we may come on to this later, but there's a thing with young players, I think, and it's very easy to not look out of place in a single game. We've had lots of guys with respect, Adam Maston, Greg Young, Aaron Arnott, Keaton Mitchell, even guys like David Mackay, who've looked okay, but there's a big difference between looking okay and not being completely out of your depth, but actually then saying, right, this is a player who's adding something and contributing. And I think Kai Montague's at that stage where we're now really starting to see, can he add something and help us kick on? And he's only going to do that with minutes. So I was happy to see him in.
Yeah, it's the nature of the beast of football at this level that players, particularly, young players really, who they're in a circumstance where it's very difficult with the game time because every game matters with the playoffs. And it's tough for them to get bled into a team because it's very rare that you get a game like last week where we go 3-0 up and then Barry Robson can probably say, with a degree of certainty, right, I'm confident that we can see out this result and bring in the guys that he wants to and give them the opportunity. Carol, Josh Mullen did drop out the team. He was replaced by J. Rowe. Is that maybe one where, again, potential that Barry Robson's had his hand forced by an injury that we're not aware of as of yet, or do you think it was an opportunity with a system change that really allowed that?
I think both those suggestions are correct. Why would you leave Mullen out if he's 100% fit, unless you're wanting to do some sort of system change? But I think, as we'll discuss earlier on, it's really difficult to see the system from our fans' point of view, like the lineup, just the formation, not really knowing what it is. So I'm going to chicken out and not answer that question and say I think both are correct.
That's all right. We'll allow it, Carol.
I would maybe just add something, though, and that I think possibly the logic might have been that we're going to be up against a quality attack and we need 5 in defence. If you're playing a 4, then you might move Docherty to right back. The logic could have been that Rowe offers maybe a bit more in the air than Mullen, on paper at least. And I know there's the jury's maybe out on J. Rowe, but he is a kind of bona fide right back, and he does have a bit of ability in the air. So I wonder if the logic was, right, we might be under the cosh, and this is somebody that's just going to give us something extra in defence.
And for yourself, Leslie, what did you sort of make in terms of the setup that Barry Robson went with in terms of formation-wise? Because it was a bit of we've all sat there in the group chat, we've all tried to figure it out, and it's quite a hard one to attribute specific players to specific places. What did you make of it? And maybe, again, it's one to keep an eye on, given that it was almost like a return to kind of how we were playing in the League Cup. Maybe not as aggressive with the 4 going forward, but still plenty of attacking threat there.
Aye. So, I think one of the things I did notice as well that maybe kind of vindicates what I was saying a minute ago was we kept Ewan Wilson in. It would have been hard to drop him, but again, that's somebody that's potentially given you a bit more physicality and a bit of aerial ability. if you're expecting you're going to be defending attacks and defending corners. So we started with that. You would imagine if you've got Jack Hamilton there, he's going to be playing pretty centrally, and that's what he does. And that's kind of what you expect your centre forward to be doing. But there were times when it looked like Easton was playing effectively completely up top with him. Sometimes I was looking certainly from where I was watching from anyway, that he was often like the furthest forward guy on the pitch. So it looks a lot more fluid. I mean, I'm just a simple spectator, a simple supporter whose knowledge of formations comes from Subbuteo, where everybody sits in a very rigid position. And I know that it's not necessarily like that in real life, but there's definitely something going there, especially when you've got a guy with Easton's quality and creativity. He'll pop up on the left, he'll pop up on the right, and he'll pop up in various places where he can make things happen. So it's very, very hard to pin down what we're doing, but you would imagine there is a logic to it.
Yeah. So to go into the game itself, the first half even starts. Rovers did go out on the front foot, but then, I mean, the first real chance comes to County. It's a tough set of circumstances, Carol, with the wind you were watching on Raith TV. There's a first chance, really, it's a sort of, probably more of a heavy back pass rather than a loose one, which goes past, Fordyce or Hanlon from Docherty. And it lets Ronan Hale shoot from distance. Do you think you've got to give a bit of credit there to Josh Ray? It's the classic they were talking about on the Terrace podcast, and I think in their lower league one quite recently, where it's looking over the shoulder. The keeper's running back, but he's looking over the shoulder. Josh Ray doing well to adjust his feet there to save it in an unconventional manner.
I think so. I think we all must have had the moment of, this is going to be one of those, isn't it? It's just going to be one of those that's going to get clipped and used for weeks. But yeah, he seems, especially considering how sticky the pitch developed later on in the game, to be able to stay on your feet and be able to manoeuvre that quickly and go backwards. Yeah, it's certainly, pardon the quite cliche thing, it saved that goal, as a good keeper should. But yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned about the pitch being sticky there, and I do feel like that was really noticeable with the way that the play was going. It was very hard for teams to build up and to be able to, because it was almost holding up. It's like that thing with, it's almost the opposite weather type to that day down in Capello where we had that recent win, but the result was the same factor. It was still that neither team could really particularly control the ball too well, and sometimes you were finding the ball was cutting up and heavy to move. In terms of Rovers' opportunities, Leslie, big one comes at the corner, sort of Dylan Easton and Hamilton, a well-worked move, and then it finds its way to Ewan Wilson, of all people, and that sort of finds himself in the box. Should he maybe do better there, or do you think it was just unfortunate that County, again, this is going to be the first in a recurring series of events of County players clearing on the line? What did you make of that chance?
It was a really clever idea from a corner. It was an extremely clever idea to just do something different. And I don't actually think Wilson does anything particularly wrong. He hits it cleanly and powerfully, and he hits it straight at the goal. I didn't realise at the time, but it's a good save from Trevor Carson. Mm-hmm. It's a good save. He's a good goalkeeper. He's got the potential. I think we could be looking back in a few months and thinking he's the best keeper in the division. It was a very, very good hit. I think the follow-up, Wilson obviously came to his weaker foot and kind of bounced off the turf and out. He's a left back though. And Wilson was our most dangerous player until about the 70th minute. He forced the most saves out of Carson. The second one, without jumping ahead too much, being from a corner again. But that was a good hit. Fair play to him. He's only recently in the door. He's finding his feet. He's looked solid enough. It was a good hit. It was a good hit, and it was right on target. Desperately unlucky, I think, with the follow-up. As I say, it just fell to his weaker foot, and he kind of lashed it and it went wide. But a very, very smart move from the corner, and I wonder if that's something we might see in a few weeks again.
Yeah, Barry Robson was attributing it to Analyst McKenna, who's part of our coaching staff, saying that they'd worked on it in the build-up in the post-match interview. But I mean, it's a tough ask for Ewan Wilson to come in because Lewis Stevenson's almost a universally popular player. You would say at the club, like it wasn't. I think when you were looking back in terms of the positions that Rovers were trying to fix earlier on in the summer, left back was not one of them. You were like, well, Lewis Stevenson's there. He's going to be sort of very, very just assured. And you know what you're getting from him. You know what to expect with him. And to be fair to Wilson, he's came in and he's done reasonably well so far. He's gradually grown into the role. Particularly, I think Barry Robson's probably quite infused by the fact as well that he does have a long throw on him as well, which offers him a bit of a different dynamic when we're trying to get the ball into the box. We're yet to see the sort of fruits of that labour, but hopefully over time that'll come. Just for yourself, Carol, the first half, lack of clear-cut chances at points. I mean, we would occasionally get the ball forward. I remember one break in particular from sort of Kai Montague where it was almost like it just ran out of steam. Do you think was there any reason for that in particular that you think were Rovers, or was it maybe down to the system that we were playing, or just trying to adjust that we were playing into the wind? What did you make of that?
I think it's what teams are trying to do to us, is just slow us down and take the steam out of the last little bit, that just as we enter the box, it just seems to all just peter out. And I think, it's just running out of steam. There's no other way to put it, really. It is just slowing down, and it's not anybody's fault. Scottish football isn't abundant with really good, fast strikers at the moment. Everybody seems to be having the same problem of scoring goals. So it's not a Rovers problem. It's a genuinely Scottish football problem. We need, if anyone wants to start a programme to bring up some strikers, it would be great. We'll buy into that.
I mean, if I was to slaughter the person that's asking the questions, i.e. me, I would say it's probably disingenuous to say, because we had plenty of chances over the 90 minutes as well. But I think the conditions probably did play quite a big part into yesterday, particularly with the first half and just being able to get forward. Just to come back to you, Les, you mentioned it earlier on, but the lack of Sean Byrne. Firstly, there was that rather incredible interview that he did with Davy Hancock where he sat down and spoke for up to an hour, just really, really candid. But, I mean, do you think that yesterday, aside from the interview, and we'll get your thoughts on that, just could we have potentially utilised that sort of true, proper number 6 there, or do you think were you quite comfortable with Brown and Matthews being in midfield and pulling the strings?
I think it would, the second half, when the weather improved, I think that's when we maybe could have done with a bit of control. The first half, it was wild. It was bonkers. The ball was up in the air all the time. And actually, Matthews in particular, I thought he was doing a great job of just winning the ball off whoever had it. Sent Declan Gallagher crashing to the ground as well. So Matthews was halving people at various points, as he is wont to do. So I think the conditions actually did suit having two guys charging about. That's not always the case. It's not always going to be the case. Most weeks it isn't. But as I say, I think with the conditions being what they were, actually just having a couple of people zipping about the place were able to just pick things up. And we did actually have quite a few of our attacks did come from one of Brown or Matthews just bombing out and picking the ball up and robbing somebody of it and then getting it moving. On the Sean Byrne interview, it was a magnificent, very, very moving and very touching interview. And I think credit to both parties, I think, to Sean for actually sitting down and being so open and candid about his life and his everything that's all the challenges he's faced. And also to Davy as well for leading that interview so well. I mean, there's just some points where he says, at one point he says to Sean, he says, I know you've put everything out the table in terms of, all your challenges, but he says, I'm going to let you sort of lead the discussion and take it in the direction you want. And one of the things in my day job is I teach young researchers how to do interviews for different things. And I'm always looking for good examples of how to be a good interviewer. And Davy Hancock is probably actually, there's not any kind of Rovers tinted specs, to use one of the great man's phrases himself there, but actually he is one of the best interviewers of any walk of life that I've ever seen. And just kind of pulling that story out, it was absolutely brilliant. I mean, the other just little angle on that as well, that I think what it brought home to me, I know this is a slightly different thing, but it's one of the reasons why I'm always very, very cautious about criticising players let alone sticking the boot into our own players, because we don't know 95% of what's going on off the pitch with these guys. And whether that's their past, whether that's their present, we do not know the vast majority of what's going on in these guys' lives. But just all the things he was talking about later as well, about fostering and adoption and autism, just what a absolutely fantastic guy, what a great ambassador for the club, and what a terrific role model as well for some of the youngsters that are coming into his Train Like a Pro sessions. So a really, really great moving bit of work all round there.
Yeah, what gets it for me is that he's so willing to help others. And I know that it's touched upon in the interview, but you'll see it all the time where it's things are getting mentioned about, like, oh, they're doing like their football cards for tops or things like that, a signed Rovers top that Sean's donated or things like that. Just brilliant attitude in terms of the way that he comes across and the difficulties that he's experienced in life and the challenges and how he's overcame them and how he's developed in terms of what he brings to the table. It's just fantastic to see. And I don't think as a fan you can ever really understate that and mention it, because I'd listened to the interview and I said in the chat right away, this is absolutely exceptional. And Davey, to take it back to Davey, we're exceptionally lucky as supporters that we've got Davey in. We sort of, when we first started the podcast, we were very abundantly clear, like, we're not going to be doing interviews with players because why? Raith TV do such a good job. Like, Davey will sit down and he's got that relationship and that dynamic. Why would you ever want to try and step on into that? Because you're going up against someone who's absolutely fantastic. But yeah, to take it back to what you say as well, yeah, as sort of supporters, again, firstly, we're not professionals in terms of we've not gone out and kicked a ball exactly. We're not exactly like Roy Keane or Gary Neville being able to say, like, oh, this is it. Where we've played the game at the top level or anything like that, where, your supporters, you get behind the team. And as well, like you rightfully say, Les, you don't know what's going on aside from in players' lives, because everyone can have personal difficulties in any walk of life. You never know what's happening behind the scenes with someone. So you've always got to give them that bit of slack and to try and stick with them, or certainly that's my opinion. And everyone's got their own sort of viewpoint on how they are at the football, how you behave, etc. I'm not going to try and police anyone. It's each to their own. So yeah, I think it's good that we've got guys like, he's done longer form interviews with Dylan before, where Dylan Easton's been quite transparent about what's happened in his life, Sean Byrne, and just across the team. I said it before, but it feels like we've got a squad of really good eggs, like a really, really good group of guys in that dressing room that are just stand out as being really just positive people and looking to bring positivity in there. Carol, what were your thoughts about it? I'm going to guess you've had the chance to listen to it, and what did you make of it?
What a genuinely lovely soul. I think that's it. And just both like him and Dylan, obviously football has changed their lives for the positive, and they just want to pass that on to either their kids or to the kids in their training, like a pro group. It's what football should be. That's what a community club is that it's a community, not just by name, but by everybody feeling part of the club and everybody pulling together and supporting each other. And I think it was a beautiful interview. Fully
agree. Right, anyway, we'll close off the first half and we'll get back to making speculative comments about footballers and what happened in the performance, because we're absolute hypocrites like that. One thing that was notable from Raith TV, Les, the first half highlights covered 2 minutes and 30 seconds of the YouTube video of 11 minutes and 41. Do you think that was a fair reflection that the game dictated by the second half and the number of chances there?
It's a weird one, because I seem to remember a lot more happening in the first half. But maybe it didn't. Or maybe what did happen by chaos and by accident rather than by design.
I think there was a lot of fouls and free kicks in the first half, but not a lot of attempts on goal.
That's probably a good way of putting it. It wasn't the most fluid of halves, and so the sun came out and the sky opened and conditions became a bit more normal. And I think that probably then reflects in the fact that you probably got chances that were because of passages of play happening rather than climatological conditions. No, but yeah, I seem to remember more happening in the first half, but then it probably didn't. One thing I will say is it quite quickly became apparent in the second half that County were going up through the gears. And again, whether that's due to weather, whether that's due to what they'd been told in the dressing room, came out the second half and it was quite clear we were not having as much. Certainly there was a spell where we weren't having as much of the ball. And particularly in the midfield, we were losing a lot more than we were in the first half. So I did notice that.
Yeah, the first major point that comes up in the highlights, Carol's a Dylan Easton shot from distance. Do you think that's the sort of positive to see us sort of going into that, being able to try and sort of create more opportunities and sort of even, I know it's something that's been mentioned before, we can maybe be a bit shot shy from range. Do you think that was positive to see us sort of like opening up to a bit of a broader field there?
Yeah, and I think we're running out of options. Is that you had to play to the weather, and the first half was just so slow, and everything was just catching. Is that try something else, and it is good to see. And Dylan Easton has got that bit in his back pocket, I think.
Yeah, but County's still very much in it. The Paul Hanlon slide tackle there, Leslie, one for the ages, as they were breaking through on goal.
It reminded me of, it reminded me of error name not known at Tannadice almost exactly 2 years ago on Moult. And one of those ones where you think if the tackle doesn't go in, if he gets that wrong, it's a penalty and it's a red card, or one or the other. Absolutely timed to perfection to, again, stop what was probably going to be a goal. That's what Paul Hanlon brings you, though. It's a shame we didn't get anything out of the game, because for those of you who are looking on YouTube, I've got a little packet of instant coffee here from Indonesia, and the camera's not...
Where does this come from, other than Indonesia?
It's sitting on my desk, and it's got one of the defenders, and it's got a caption below that says, "Stop, no way in." And I thought it would have been brilliant. I could Photoshop Paul Hanlon's head onto that, this defender with the caption "Stop, no way in." It unfortunately only worked for about 70 minutes of the game. But that's what Hanlon is like a lot of the time for us. He was struggling a little bit in the first half. He was struggling a bit, but he seemed to pick up and pull through. No, absolutely. It's in the same category for me as Ross Millen at Tannadice with regard to tackles that are exceedingly risky but end up going right.
Yeah, he's... the experience that he brings to the table and what he offers the club, he's been a brilliant sort of in this spell. He's been here for a year and a half now, and he's always stood out as being exceptional at what he does. You can tell that he's played at the highest level in Scotland, certainly. And yeah, just to be able to get back and time that so well. And then I'm just going to stick with you, Liz, on the 57th minute. We bring on Paul McMullen, who comes on for Kai Montague. I just want to check with you what you made of sort of Kai Montague's performance overall, just over the piece. I know that you'd spoken about like the potential that he's got. Was that maybe a difficult game for him to go into and try and impart himself onto, or how did you feel that he performed on the day?
Absolutely. I mean, I do feel a bit for Kai Montague, because it seems to be he doesn't seem to get a run out for us under normal conditions. Anytime he seems to get an extended start or an extended run, it seems to be in a crisis or an emergency. So most notably last year at Falkirk, when Scott Brown went down quite early on, and he was thrust into action. It was either when Dabo or Brown, one of them went down, he was put on and effectively told, "You're playing the finest lower league football side ever for the last 20 years. Go and try and make something happen." The other one being the Queen's Park game last year, where we were under the caution, we were trying to see out a result, and effectively he was thrown on and told to run about and hold the ball on, which was not great. So again, he's told, like, absolutely awful conditions. The ball's going to be all over the place. The pitch is horrendous. Go out and try and do something. It's really not ideal for him. And I think he started well. He tried hard. he didn't hide. He certainly didn't hide. He was getting stuck in. He was winning balls off people. He was trying to play Jack Hamilton. Then he was trying to find Dylan Easton. He was doing everything right. He did fade out of the game a bit. And whether that was, as I say, I think the conditions changing and Ross County being able to actually use the undoubted quality they have a bit more, whether it was just tiredness, whether it's just kind of, as I say, fading out of the game as things were evolving. I think it was the right time, though. And I think Kai Montague can take a lot of heart from that. He came in, and as I say, it wasn't one of those performances where you can get a youngster comes in and is effectively there and you don't notice them. He was there and he gave it a good go, he gave it a good crack, and he can go off thinking, I had a really good 55 minutes, and hopefully we're getting towards the stage now where, he's not just an extra space in the bench, but he's actually a bona fide option in that sort of number 10 role. I would love to think that in time we could get to a point with him where he maybe does what Sam Stanton was doing for us last season, which has been that guy that can, come a bit deeper, pick the ball up and bring it forward and do a lot of that linking. And he may get there yet, but no, again, good for him just to get minutes under his belt and, prove to the manager that he's a viable option. I would just to complete reverse of James Keating's, I think he is viable as a footballer going forwards.
Well, I think that you're spot on, and you mentioned right at the start, going forward, the attacking options that we've got are probably going to dwindle over the next few weeks, given the sort of circumstances with international duties and players being away, sort of potential injuries. So I think in the next few weeks, if Kai Montague's make a stamp on this team and to really exert himself and to be able to move forward, I think the next few weeks is going to be key. Again, he's got a full season to do it, and he signed a long-term contract last year, I believe. So, yeah, I think there's every reason to be optimistic about him. You just want to see, you're just hoping that it's one where he'll take confidence from last week getting that assist. If he gets a goal, then he's going to take a lot of confidence from that. It's just about these big moments and these big landmarks that you sort of see footballers have, and hopefully he'll be able to continue his progress and moving forward. Rovers then do start to create a few chances back to back. So Jack Hamilton had a header at a corner. Ross Matthews has a shot which is deflected at wide. Are you starting to get into the territory, Carol, of this not being our day when you're seeing those chances, particularly after the first half when we had Jack Hamilton shooting wide, the corner chance with Ewan Wilson? Is starting to begin to worry at that point?
Yeah, I think overall in the game we had something like 16 shots and 7 on target. Right. And you're just starting to think at like 13, this isn't going to happen, is it? This is just it. Unless someone physically walks the ball over the line, we're not getting a goal. This is not our day. The weather's against us. The goal scoring's against us. It's not happening.
And for you, Les, I mean, do you think that with it, it's one to attribute to finishing or chance creation, or do you think it's just one where you just got to say, like, look, also as well, reasonably stout defending from County?
That's exactly. I was just going to cut in at the end there and say that. I think you've got to give Ross County a bit of credit as well. I mean, they've not started the season well, but they have recruited well. They've spent their budget well, and maybe some people have been ushered out the door already. Others. But, as I say, Carson is a cheat code of a goalkeeper at this level still. One of the clearances off the line was down to Declan Gallagher just being in exactly the right place at the right time. And another one, that was Miller Thompson one later on. That's maybe just luck rather than good defending, given the position he normally plays. And I think a lot of that is just good defending and having guys that have got the physicality in the right places. I think Ross County do deserve a good amount of credit there for how well they defended and how organised they were. It did concern me a bit that Ewan Wilson was our most dangerous player until about the 70th minute mark in terms of shots that he'd forced saves out of the goalkeeper from. You want your centre backs, you want your full backs, you want your midfielders to be popping up with goals, but you probably won't. And I'll be very, very careful how I phrase this, given what I said just a few minutes ago. I think we probably want to see a bit more out of our forwards. Jack Hamilton, that's a few games now where he's been really close. Partick, he missed one at the back post. Had a header yesterday where arguably could have got more on it. Maybe this is, we know he's been injured for a very long time. He's coming back. He's getting himself in the right places. That's the thing. I mean, I will say that. He's in the right place. But it's quite telling. You look at the highlights, and you look at how many of the highlights are Jack Hamilton getting things on target, and how many are Ronan Hale getting shots away. And again, it's maybe very, very unfair to make a direct comparison between those two, given kind of ages, career trajectories, where they've come from, etc., etc. But it is quite noticeable and quite telling, that difference. You see, and again, I'm bringing that back to County rather than it wanting to be a direct criticism of our players and our squad. County do have the guys right throughout the pitch. As I say, they've started poorly, but they've got that individual quality throughout the pitch, and I think ultimately that's one of the things that did kind of shine through yesterday. That sounds like, I think that's the end of one of the past 6 games. Like, if you get a narrow defeat and you've had lots of shots on target, it triggers Peter Brackley going, well, a valiant effort there. Ultimately, individual quality was the difference between the two sides, or something like that. So give me a bit of a flashback to that.
It's always good to get a past 6 flashback. But yeah, really, you talk about the strength and depth that County have there. 1-0 to County with a Gary Mackay, Stephen Cross. Maybe questions about closing down. Jordan Docherty, the header, it looks like he's trying to header it away, but it goes backwards. Josh Ray then makes 2 admirable saves from Jordan White, but then Miller Thompson, a new signing, is there to bundle in a rebound. Any particular attribution for any faults there, Carol? Would be there anyone that you're pointing the finger at, or is it just unfortunate situations after unfortunate situations occurring?
It was just like the domino effect of bad things. I mean, was it a header from Docherty, or was it just a really bad deflection because he looked a bit confused when he turned round? Just a lot of really bad luck. And then luck for County. I think if it had been up at the other end, we would be not a great goal, but we'll take it. It's been a crap bit of game. It's been crap weather. We'll take it.
Certainly,
it was just unfortunate.
Barry Robson in his post-match interview was sort of saying it was about 4 opportunities to stop things. I mean, for you, Les, was anything jumping out? Because I did notice, if you watch back on the highlights, there's a bit of sort of finger pointing before Mackay Stephen gets in the cross. I think sort of Jay Rose telling someone else to go and track him down, and you're asking the question about who would be best in that role. I've seen a bit online about Jordan Docherty. Should he maybe have done better with a header? Which personally, I'd be a bit more on the fence about that one. I think it would be a bit rough to blame him. And then as well, just to the actual area of having it in the box for so long. What was your perspective on it all?
I think Docherty's probably done the right thing. He's tried to hit it. And if he'd had an exceedingly long neck or even a bit taller, he might have gotten away with it. As it is, it's come up and it's bounced over, and it's then not been able to be cleared. Yeah, I mean, you could again trace it back, and you could say, okay, maybe we should have stopped the cross getting in. I always remember Ian Murray used to say that when he was defending Big Kev. He would say, okay, Big Kev didn't save the shot, but there's 4 or 5 points at which the attack should have been stopped. And it's almost one of those Swiss cheese models. There's a number of small failings that kind of come together. Yep, somebody could have tracked Gary Mackay Stephen. Yep, Docherty could have made a slightly better header. Ray makes a valiant attempt to block it, and it just ends up falling at Miller Thompson's feet. There were warning signs before, though. So we did lose the ball and get caught on the counter. Also, Josh Ray, absolute heart and mouth stuff. And just a few minutes before that, shot straight down his throat, which he then drops and it spills and goes spinning through his feet.
Yeah, it was almost like he parried it behind him and then had to gather it.
So I don't know whether the ball was just because of how it was travelling, if it was spinning, if it was wet or whatever, but he caught it and dropped it and it spun through his legs. Oh,
there was another one as well that didn't make the highlights, where it was almost like the ball got cleared behind the goal, but from the angle that it was at, it looked like it had gone in. And I was a bit worried about that as well. And can't remember if it was Wilson or someone else, but
I think it might have been Fordyce or Wilson. I know the one you mean, because I thought the same. I was like, oh, for God's sake, let's go through it and go.
It looked like he just punted it back into the net, and I was like, what? But no, fortunately not. Yeah, I mean, across the piece, like, it was interesting reading the chat. I know that we've Jay Rose came back into the team. I do wonder if there's a degree of a confidence issue there. You want to support the player and you want to give them the opportunities. But yeah, to see Josh Mullen drop out, and he's been admirable for us. It would be great to get a penny for Barry Robson's thoughts as to like why he's gone with each selection. You're only going to get so much out of Raith TV, and that's understandable because, again, it's not in our interest to have sort of forensic Barry Robson. Why did you pick this player? That's his job. That's what he gets paid to do. And again, with J-Ro, you want to see him being bombing forward. At times, he was maybe a bit more reserved in the second half. Do you think that was fair to say, Carol? Do you think that's maybe just sort of that we're in a position where we're at that point a 0-0 draw, and then maybe there's a degree of fear, or what did you make of that?
I think I'm going to pick up on Leslie said about the Ross County going up through the gears. I think as they went up through the gears, J Rowe certainly did not have as much freedom and was sitting a bit further back than normal. And also, I think at some point we were not resided to a 0-0 draw, but I think the clean sheet was more important than the win at some point during that game.
Yeah, I think it's a very valid point. You just hopefully that we can progress and we can get that confidence that it is, because I think there was positive points where he was getting forward during the game. It's just when you get into that second half and it gets to that kind of crunch point.
And that's definitely our style. That's definitely what Robson wants. Is he wants us up high. He wants. It's not that I don't think he's. Well, he said that we'll jump forward to the second goal. He said that he's willing to risk getting a goal and losing a goal and being up higher. So that's definitely the style we're going. But it seemed to be in the second half, Ross County just went up through those gears and just closed it down more and more.
Yeah, because we bring on Josh Mullen to replace J-Ro later on. Again, I would be. This seems like probably one of the ones where statistically, as a fan, you have an opinion and you say this and you make a statement, and then someone will come in with the stats like, actually, you're talking absolute pish. Like, this happens quite regularly. But yeah, Josh Mullen comes on for J-Ro, and also as well, Josh Gentles comes on to replace Jack Hamilton. Gentles probably having one of the best chances in the game, cleared off the line, as well as Ross Matthews. At that point, Les, quite a frustrating point to see those chances getting cannoned off players, and should Gentles maybe do better with the one that's sort of hits in towards goal? He's got quite a lot to aim at. Could he maybe have done better, or is it, again, good defending?
I did. I watched this one back a few times. This is the one where it's Gallagher that clears it. So I watched it back a few times. So if I rewind a bit, so Dylan Easton finds the ball in there. It gets blocked, and then it basically lands at Josh Gentles' feet in a crowded 6-yard box. And yeah, he's got the ball at his feet. And he probably does, what he's probably thinking is the goalie's there. I'm going to fire it to the left of the goalie. And you've also probably got to remember it's probably come to whatever his stronger foot is. I mean, he's assuming from the foot he's shot with, he's probably right-footed. And somebody's going to come in the comments and tell me I'm wrong here. But anyway, he's got the ball at his feet. He's probably seen the goalkeeper and thought, I'm just going to fire it away from the goalkeeper and in towards the far post, where unfortunately, a very large centre-back is waiting to just ping it away. But you absolutely cannot blame him for having a crack, having a go. Had that been Lewis Vaughan in prime form, he might have just taken a minute and dinked it over the keeper. Had it been Richard Chin, he probably would have flicked up in the air and done a Rabona or something like that and fired it into the net. But no, I think you can't blame Josh Gentles for having a go. He's in the right place. A bit unfortunate. Also, just a word while I've got the airtime as well for J-Ro. I mean, he did go into his shell, I think. I think he was partly constrained. He did go into his shell quite a bit. But before he went off, he had a brilliant run into the box. Took on a couple of guys, was making a beeline straight for goal. And then, asked the question of whether he could buy a penalty, to which the answer was no. That was amazing.
I did like that he goes down and suspectfully looking for the penalty. The play rages on. And he doesn't ask anything after, because he's like, well, if I ask anything after, I'm probably going to get booked, which, no need for that. But yeah, I think with Gentles, to come back to him, it was kind of almost like the ball gets stuck under his feet a little bit, just with the angle. It's not like he's straight on with the whole goal to aim at, so it's probably fair to mention that as well. It does. I feel with Gentles, it's been very stop-starting. That he's only made his debut last week against Arbroath, didn't get much game time, and then he gets thrust on again. Keen to see more of him, to be honest. I think that he's certainly physically, I think that he's up to the part. It's just looking to see how we can utilise him a bit more. He goes away for international duty. He'll probably get game time there. Didn't go away with the Rangers over to Austria, of course, in terms of the game that they had in Europe during the week. How much longer Rangers are in Europe is a different question in itself, but I suppose, it might improve given the result today with Russell Martin getting potentially bodied out. Carol, to come back to you, 2-0 to Ross County after those chances. Rovers, Barry Robson mentions it, we kind of go great guns to try and get back into the game to either draw or win it, and then ultimately we lose 2-0 because counter-attack, Ronan Hale goes up the pitch. We know he's a prolific goal scorer to double the advantage for County. Do you think that was just symptomatic of how the gung-ho approach had worked out?
Yep, it was inevitable it was going to happen, but as soon as you seen him start the run, you're like, that's the second goal coming, because we are far too far forward trying to get an equaliser. But c'est la vie, I think. I'm going to regret saying this, but I don't think the playoffs are going to be decided on goal difference. I really don't. So what's risk it for a biscuit? I'm going to regret saying that. I'm going to regret saying that.
Don't worry. Yeah, and I think it was the end of the game, a frustrating afternoon naturally for Rovers. Keen to get your thoughts on this. Is it fair to say that we potentially that we had the opportunities there, we just didn't take them? County did the opposite, where they did take the opportunities that came up. Sour grapes to maybe say that we could have had a better result out of that one, Leslie, or are you of the opinion that we were potentially a bit unfortunate?
You have defeats, and I think this is what I would class as an unlucky defeat. You can lose a game, and you can acknowledge that you were, to an extent, unlucky. You can have defeats where you acknowledge that you played like a bunch of shite bags, and we've had enough of those in the last year, especially last season, especially. But this is one probably even more so than the Partick game, where you think actually that was an unlucky defeat. There were plenty signs there, and if we'd been able to take the chances that we had, and we'd been potentially if we'd been against a team that didn't have the individual quality that they had, then we may well have come away getting something out of that. We're very, very unlucky, I think, to come away with nothing after what we put in. And the second goal especially, much like the St Johnstone one, I'm not too bothered about that because we were pushing forward, and that can happen. When you're pushing for a late equaliser, that it can happen. It's an occupational hazard, so I'm not going to be too concerned about anything that happened there or who was responsible for it. But no, I would chalk that one up as being an unlucky defeat, but with the acknowledgement that if you have 16 shots, you've got to be converting one of them at some point, and that's where we need to be seeing a bit more from the attacking options that we have, and also to an extent to the management as well with regard to who they put on. Again, but with recognising that our hands were tied a bit, given that Vaughan was injured, Smith's only just back from injury, and you're not going to put him on a shit pitch to try and get a point. Gentles did well. I think our hands were tied a bit, so I would chalk that up as an unlucky defeat.
And just Carol, for you, just end of the first quarter now. So we've played every team in the league once. Just what are your reflections in terms of the squad that's been built? And just for you, is that something that you want to see a bit more of in terms of maybe chance creation, or are you quite happy in terms of the performances? Because realistically, every game that we've gone into so far, aside from maybe one or two, has been relatively close. Even the defeats, we've not looked out of place. So do you think it's one where we've just got to bide our time and watch the squad continue to gel? Whereabout is your perspective on things?
I feel this is one of the strongest squads we've had, and we've, instead of having to field team with 5 people on the bench that we've pulled out of the Bevy Park because we can't field anyone, where we've now got options, we've now got choices, and this seems like a luxury we've not had in a while. But there is just something missing. It's like we've created this fantastic fireworks show, but it's a damp squib in front of the box. 16 shots, and we need to be converting one of them. Even if it is just like rugby tackle it over the line, something needs to go in. But we've played every team twice, so they've seen 3 or 4 different formations from us. And I think that's where our strength is, the element of surprise.
Yeah, I mean, in the games that we have played, as I say, I think that last Saturday against Arbroath was one where we get the goal at the start of the first half, or start of the second half even, after riding our luck to a degree with Arbroath hitting the bar and having a sort of free header. And then we built so much confidence on that. And it was almost like the polar opposite this week, where it's a difficult mindset to break, I'd suspect, when you're seeing chance after chance not go in. And you know that County are dangerous and that they're still desperate to get their first win of the league campaign.
It was like yesterday, heads went down with every shot that was missed, whereas last week, heads went up with every shot that was missed. It was just a completely different dynamic.
Anyone else? I feel probably vaguely similar as to how I felt post-match against Partick Thistle, where we lost by the odd goal in 5. But we had opportunities in there to be able to, where you look back and you think, like, yeah, we could have, on another day, it might have happened. And I think that's the difficult thing, because a lot of people, with the way that, I think that people automatically go into Barry Robson's interviews and go sort of like, oh, what's the excuse this time? Whereas I think there's still enough in terms of the squad to sort of look at it and say, like, on other days, we could be winning these games or getting draws out of these games. Leslie, what are your reflections from sort of the first quarter? We end up with 14 points, is it, a potential for 27. Where about are you?
In a significantly better place than I was this time last year. So I think this time last year, I pointed out that we were sleepwalking into a relegation battle. I don't feel that at the moment. I think there's a good amount of quality. I mean, I would again just note that I think that the cut-off for the relegation playoff spot is probably going to be around 45 points this year, because there's only, other than Airdrie, nobody's getting marooned. Everybody's picking up points. So you don't want to go on a run of losing 5 games, or you could suddenly find yourselves in trouble. I don't want us to end up in that position, but I think we've started well, and there's a good level of quality. I mean, the performances we're seeing are significantly better than the performances that we were seeing from Neil Collins last season. And in fact, to be honest, some of the performances we were getting from Ian Murray. So the way we're playing is a lot better. I'm with regard to kind of recruitment and attacking options, I'm in 2 minds. On one hand, it is difficult. So we don't have the money to go out and pay top dollar for a Tony Watt or a Ronan Hale or somebody like that. We don't have that kind of money. And, even Jamie Gullen, somebody like that, we were apparently had a deal ready to go and whatever, and ended up, that he ended up, we clearly offered him something, ended up at St Johnstone. On the other hand, you look, so there's Queen's Park have gone out and found Josh Fowler. Morton have got a tune out of Tommy Adeloy. Really the only addition we've made as a centre forward is Josh Gentles from last season. Are we letting the perfect be the enemy of the good when it comes to bringing somebody in? Or is this where we're at? And again, the counterpoint to that would be if Lewis Vaughan is fit and firing, which I hope he will be soon, if Jack Hamilton gets a bit of confidence, if Callum Smith comes back to fitness, that's 3 decent forwards right off the bat. So I feel very conflicted. I don't know what to say, but I think the main takeaway for me is we are in a much stronger position than we were at this time last season.
Yeah, I feel like the ceiling for there's a number of players in the squad that we've got at the moment where you just feel like their ceiling's higher than and this isn't to slaughter anyone. This isn't anyone to chuck anyone under the bus, but like J Rose probably a good example. Like he was I think he was Players Player of the Year for Boston United last season. He's got the capability. It's just about seeing it and just making sure that again that like we're being able to get the best out of him. And it's going to be difficult moving up to Scotland where you're out of your comfort zone. You're moving into this new environment. You said, Leslie, giving players sort of benefit of the doubt to a degree. So hopefully over time we can sort of be able to see that. But I think if you look across the squad, there is a few, particularly in the sort of forward areas, where they'll know themselves. They'll probably be sitting there thinking like, well, been unfortunate a few times, just need things to break for me. And then if you can get on a bit of momentum and a bit of a run. I mean, we've pulled an ace out of the hole with Richard Chin in terms of him coming in. A real live wire. Now, it's going to be difficult because we lose him for international duty given the circumstances, but you've got to respect that, and it's a great opportunity for the guy. I'm optimistic going forward. I feel like, as I said before, I feel like with the defeats that we've had, we've not been a million miles away from it with any of the games. Like, there's definitely been moments in those games where you think if it goes the other way, we're potentially looking at draws, if not victories. So keen to see what quarter two holds. A lot of difficult games in there. Ayr United are in really good form coming up next weekend, and then we've got Dunfermline after that. So Derby's at East End Park are notoriously wins, maybe not over the last few years, but going back, it was a good decade before we'd won until we reached that period under Ian Murray where we just went there 3 times and won 3 times. So time will tell. Any final points going into this after the county game? Any final thoughts for yourself, Carol or Leslie?
Even though it was defeat, I feel positive. I do feel positive about this next run up to Christmas. I think, I'm going to be positive. Yay.
Good. And for you,
I
Les?
was just having a wee chuckle to myself there because I was looking at my notes, and this is completely unrelated to anything, but Dara O'Connor still hasn't kicked a ball for us.
Yeah.
No.
Beavers Paul Niso.
I'd written his name down on the sheet because what I was thinking was if you wanted a back 5 and you knew you were going to be under a cosh, what you would do is bring O'Connor in and move Docherty out to right back in a back 3/5. So that option is there. But it maybe just speaks to the fact that we do have options and chances to do things differently. So we've got this guy we've brought into great fanfare who has actually not kicked a ball for us this season. And I wonder when he's going to first appear. Maybe we can make that a wee competition for our listeners. When do we think Dara O'Connor is first actually going to play a competitive game for Raith Rovers?
I mean, do you think he's going to get in ahead of Callum Smith or Paul Niso first? Like, we could place our bets as to who's going to get the game time first.
As well.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, certainly looking in terms of the bench that we had yesterday, Sean Byrne, we know all about Sean Byrne. Josh Gentles comes off the bench. Aidan Glavin has got Josh Race reliably in his sort of number 1 pick. Paul McMullen, Josh Ballin, Paul Niso, Dara O'Connor, Callum Smith, and then Lewis Stevenson. So much experience in terms of that bench to be able to mix it up. So whether Barry Robson, what his next move is, certainly with the last few weeks, I know that we'd scored 3 against Arbroath, but I think even a couple of games before that we'd not scored, and then yesterday we don't score as well. So he's got the ability to mix it up, but what he actually does is anyone's guess. So yeah, it's just it's an impossible one to tell, isn't it? But we'll see, and we'll be back here to speculate and pass comment in every single shape or form. That'll round us off for the evening. I'll be back tomorrow. I've got an interview with Stephen Lawford that I'm going to do to chat about his new book that's came out and just his experiences and handling that. So looking forward to that. That'll be a good chat. But yes, Carol and Leslie, thanks to the both of you for joining me this evening, and thank you for taking the time to listen. And as ever, bye for now.